Imagine fighting your entire life for a dream career, seeing your efforts recognized, until, just when everything seemed to be going your way, your own sister decides to destroy everything with a devastating lie. The stage was set for a final blow, but what she didn't know was that the truth held something far more powerful in store. And before she could deliver her revenge speech, the entire world discovered what was hidden. How did this happen? Prepare for a twist that will surprise you. When we look in the mirror and see the person we've always wanted to be, we feel an indescribable sense of pride. Everything seems so clear. The journey to this point has been marked by hard work, dedication, and difficult choices. The dream seems within reach, and each step we take seems closer to fulfillment. But what happens when that dream begins to be threatened by something unexpected? What do we do when what seemed like a lifetime of promise begins to crumble? Lily's life, like many of ours, was always built around the idea that with effort, dedication, and patience, she could achieve anything. She was never the most talented, but she had something that set her apart: her persistence. From a young age, she fought to prove herself. For her, success wasn't a matter of luck, but of constant effort. And it was this effort that took her to the top, to a place where her achievements were finally being recognized, where she felt her work was finally bearing fruit. She was about to achieve something big. Her name was being considered for a prestigious position, an opportunity that could change her life forever. It was the moment she'd always dreamed of, something she'd been working toward every day for years. However, what no one knew was that, behind this glow, a shadow was brewing. And this shadow wouldn't come from a distant enemy or fierce competition. The threat was much closer than she could have imagined, inside her own home, within her own family. Lily's sister, Emily, had always been a constant presence in her life. They grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and even frustrations. However, something inside Emily was changing. As Lily got closer and closer to her goal, Emily seemed more distant. There was something in her behavior that no longer fit. Once an ally, Emily now seemed to be becoming a silent rival. But how could this happen? How could someone who had been by her side throughout the entire process suddenly become a threat? The answer wasn't simple, and it took Lily a long time to realize what was really happening. After all, she believed that family relationships trumped any ambition. However, deep down, Emily had her own desires and insecurities, things she had never shared with anyone. While Lily felt closer to her dreams, Emily felt her own life was fading away. A shadow erased by her sister's light. What began as a simple feeling of jealousy, something small and insignificant, soon escalated into something much bigger. Emily was no longer willing to remain in the shadows. She no longer wanted to be seen as the supporting sister. When the opportunity to sabotage Lily's career arose, she saw it as a chance to release the frustration that had consumed her for years. What began as a simple lie in a private conversation turned into something devastating. Something that could destroy not only Lily's career but also her very sanity. However, lying wasn't the only thing Emily had in mind. She planned something deeper, more treacherous. She knew that to bring her sister down, a small slander or a nasty comment wasn't enough. Something more convincing was needed, something that would make everyone believe Lily was guilty. And that's when she sprang into action, using her closeness to Lily's family and co-workers to create a web of deceit aimed at destroying everything Lily had achieved. But, as we know, lies have short legs. What Emily didn't know was that the truth, no matter how hard it tries to hide, always finds a way to emerge, even if it means bringing with it the biggest of surprises. Lily's brilliant career was about to be tarnished by a slander as great as any mistake she had ever made. But what Emily didn't anticipate was the power of truth. What she didn't know was that, even before her speech was delivered, the truth would sweep across the stage, exposing her lies and bringing to light the very thing she so feared now. Imagine yourself in Lily's shoes. Imagine the anguish of seeing your life, your achievements, threatened by something you could never have anticipated. How would you handle this situation? What would you do if you learned your own sister was trying to destroy what you loved most? How would you react to such a profound betrayal, one that would affect not only your career but also your soul? And, most importantly, what would happen when the truth finally emerged? You won't want to miss the next chapter of this story, because what follows is a twist that will challenge everything you thought you knew about loyalty and justice. Get ready, because this story is just beginning. Did you enjoy this thrilling story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss out on this plot full of surprises. Let's continue this journey together. It was a silent, cold night, the sky a deep, almost black blue. Lily sat in her apartment by the window, watching the city lights scatter like distant stars. The calm of the night always made her reflect on the path she had taken to get there. The feeling that success was within her grasp was intoxicating. But at the same time, a slight uneasiness nagged at her. In her life, nothing seemed to have come easy. Lily always had to fight for every achievement. The career she had built was a reflection of her relentless dedication, a journey marked by difficult choices and tireless work. She had faced hardships few would understand, but she always believed that if she followed the right path, her actions would speak for themselves. Success would come, sooner or later. And finally, it was happening. But there had been something strange lately, a growing unease she couldn't ignore, as if there were something in the air, an invisible tension. Emily, her sister, had always been a part of her life. They'd grown up together, sharing everything: laughter, secrets, fears. They'd always been like two halves of a single soul, or at least that's what Lily thought. In recent months, however, things began to change. Conversations between the two became more tense, more distant. Emily, who had previously shared every detail of her life, now seemed quiet, cold, as if keeping something to herself. The glow that once illuminated her sister's face had disappeared, replaced by a shadow Lily couldn't quite identify. The last time they met for dinner, something in Emily's gaze had been different. She was there, physically present, but seemed to be elsewhere. The way she talked about Lily's life, as if it were nothing more than a series of achievements that could easily be erased, sent a chill down Lily's spine. "You're going to your meeting tomorrow, aren't you?" Emily asked, her tone sounding normal at first. But something was off. "It's going to be a big step in your career, isn't it?" Lily smiled, trying to hide the tension that began to form in her chest. "Yes, it's going to be the biggest step of my life." Emily looked at her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hopefully everything works out, then. After all, it's easy to fall when you're so high, isn't it?" Lily tried to ignore it, but Emily's words echoed in her mind, like a song she couldn't get out of her head. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. "I'm just trying to do my best," she replied, trying to lighten the mood. But she knew, deep down, that something was changing at that moment. Lily didn't know it, but she was beginning to understand the shadow of envy that was silently creeping between them. Emily didn't talk about it openly, but her words, her gestures, and even her silences were conveying a clear message. She was no longer happy for Lily's success. Something was gnawing at her insides. What had once been an inseparable sisterhood now began to feel like a silent war. Lily, even though she was the more successful, no longer felt completely secure in her relationship with Emily. It was as if the glow of her victory had somehow overshadowed her sister. And this intense light was casting a shadow Emily couldn't control. Envy, silent and insidious, began to take root. What was supposed to be a supportive, loving, sisterly relationship began to transform into something much more complicated. Emily didn't need to shout or make a fuss. Her small actions, her carefully placed words, were more than enough to plant doubt in Lily's mind. Lily, for her part, wanted to believe nothing had changed. She wanted to see her sister, as she always had, as someone who was by her side, who shared the same dreams. But the truth was that, increasingly, Emily's gaze seemed more distant, more filled with resentment, and this was slowly eroding the trust they had built over so many years. As time passed, the signs became clearer. Lily began to notice Emily acting strangely, always observing Lily's achievements from afar, with a fake smile. It was as if she were preparing for something, but what? The answer was lurking, like a shadow that grew ever stronger. Deep down, Lily still believed her sister was incapable of doing anything that could harm her. They were sisters, after all. But as she looked back on the past few months of their interaction, a cold, uneasy feeling began to form in her heart. Lily knew something was about to happen, something she couldn't foresee, something that could change everything forever. What Emily was about to do wouldn't be a direct attack. It wouldn't be something you could see clearly, but something so insidious that it would go unnoticed until it was too late. And Lily didn't know that the most difficult battle of her life was about to begin and that her own sister would be her greatest enemy. The clock continued to tick, and the future that had seemed so promising was now at the mercy of something far greater and darker than any challenge Lily had ever faced. What came next, she could never have imagined. The day was clear and warm, with the sun shining relentlessly over the city. Lily was preparing for the biggest event of her professional life, a meeting that could cement her career forever. The conference room was ready, fluorescent lights reflected off the glass windows, and the anticipation of being about to take such a significant step made her heart beat faster. She took a deep breath, trying to push away her nerves and focus on what really mattered. This was the moment of her life, the beginning of a brilliant future. She didn't know, however, that morning would be the last she would feel in control, not in that sense. Because while she was so wrapped up in anticipation of her future, her sister, Emily, was plotting something that would make all the difference. Something that not even the most astute mind could have foreseen. Something that would make her question everything she had believed about loyalty, trust, and brotherly love. On the way to the meeting, Lily received a text from Emily. It was a simple, "Good luck on your big day. I hope everything goes well for you." Lily smiled, slightly uncomfortable with the coldness in her sister's words, but thought it might just be the stress of the moment. After all, she didn't have time to get lost in unnecessary worries. The meeting was a big step, and she needed to stay focused when she entered the conference room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the cool air conditioning. The table was filled with important executives, people she knew and respected well, but who, at that moment, seemed distant and impersonal. Lily sat down, put on her blazer, and smiled at everyone. She was ready. She knew she had prepared for this moment for years, and nothing could take that away from her. But what she didn't know was that upon entering the room, she had already been betrayed. The betrayal wouldn't come from a stranger or an outsider, but from within her own family circle. It was impossible for Lily to imagine that, as she prepared to shine, Emily had already taken her treacherous step. Her sister's words, spoken the night before, were like a key turning a lock, opening the door to chaos. While Lily was in her meeting, Emily's phone rang somewhere far away. It was a message from one of the executives, something no one imagined would become so important. The message simply said, "Your sister is giving a big presentation, but something isn't right. There are some questions about your past that need to be addressed." And in that moment, Emily saw her chance. She knew she could make this work. She knew the lie she was about to unleash had the power to destroy what Lily loved most. What had begun as a simple idea, a silent conversation in her heart, now felt like an irreversible truth. But it wasn't as if Emily had gone to Lily's office and said what she had in mind out loud. No, the betrayal would be much more subtle. She knew Lily would be invincible if she knew what was going on. So Emily decided to be smarter than that. She would plant doubt quietly, manipulating the truth with her words, twisting small details until the lie became reality for all to see. While Lily's meeting progressed, Emily found herself in a discreet office, out of sight. There, she made the call that would begin to change the course of things forever. It was a discreet but precise call to an important contact within the organization where Lily worked. Emily began sowing the seeds of doubt, mentioning a series of details that seemed harmless at first glance, but when put together, created a web that could easily topple any edifice. She spoke of a mistake from Lily's past, something no one knew about and that Emily had kept secret for years. She didn't need to tell the complete truth. She just had to cast a shadow of doubt. "I just think we should look deeper into what's being said about her past," Emily said, her voice as calm and friendly as ever. But the words coming out of her mouth carried the weight of a bomb about to explode. Meanwhile, Lily continued her presentation. She spoke confidently, sharing her ideas, her plan, everything she had done to get there. The future seemed at her feet, but inside, something was beginning to disintegrate. She didn't know it, but she was being watched differently. Those around her were now beginning to question her integrity, all thanks to a simple phone call. A seed planted that began to grow without anyone noticing. The meeting ended, and Lily left the room with a smile on her face. She thought everything was under control, but when she got to her desk, she saw a message that would make her stomach churn. It was from a coworker, someone she'd always trusted, but who now, with disconcerting coldness, wrote, "We need to talk. Something strange is happening with your profile. You'd better check." Lily's smile faded instantly. Something was wrong, something she couldn't control, or even understand. A heavy feeling settled over her chest, and a shiver ran down her spine. What was happening? Why did she feel like the ground was slipping away from under her feet? There was no doubt now, something had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Emily knew exactly what she was doing. She had just set in motion a force that could no longer be stopped. Lily was about to face the biggest fight of her life, and the person she loved most was now her greatest enemy. Lily could hardly believe what was happening. She sat at her desk, phone in hand, and the thought she'd been trying to push away every moment was now coming to fruition before her eyes. Her coworker's message wasn't just a warning, it was the trigger for an explosion she hadn't seen coming. The doubt she'd been trying to ignore was becoming an irrefutable certainty. "We need to talk. Something strange is happening with your profile. You better check it out." She stared at the screen, trying to understand. What could be happening? Everything she had done up until that moment seemed right. Everything aligned. Everything was finally in place. Or at least that's what she believed. She took a deep breath and began searching through the documents on her computer, trying to find some clue, some logical explanation. But the more she investigated, the more everything seemed to fall apart. Soon after, more messages began to arrive. First, one from the company secretary, asking her to meet with the director. The tone was impersonal, cold, but also urgent. Then, an email she never expected to receive, from a key member of the board, suggesting that she needed to review some of the information she had submitted for the last project. Everything around her began to spin. Lily couldn't tell if the feeling of insecurity was stronger than fear, or if confusion was overwhelming her senses. The moment she entered the director's conference room, she felt her life was on the verge of a rupture. The warmth of the room didn't feel welcoming. On the contrary, the room felt cramped, the walls closing in as if trying to suffocate any chance of explanation. "Sit down, Lily," the director said, his gaze hard and filled with doubt. "We're investigating something very serious, something related to a mistake you made in your professional history." The word mistake echoed in Lily's ears like a distant scream. What did he mean? What was he implying? Words began to fail her mind, a whirlwind of confusion. She tried to focus, to take a deep breath, but something inside her knew she wasn't here for a simple review of documents. There was something more, something dark, that she couldn't yet fully comprehend. The meeting was a succession of rapid-fire questions. Interrogations without clear answers. She tried to defend herself, explaining that everything had been done with the utmost care, that her projects were in order. But something inside her felt her words were being absorbed without belief. With each explanation she gave, a new doubt arose. The director was no longer looking at her with confidence. He was suspicious, as if everything she had achieved was now a lie that needed to be deconstructed. And worst of all, he wasn't doing it alone. When the meeting finally ended, with vague promises that a deeper investigation would be conducted, Lily was called into a private meeting with the head of human resources. She entered the room and was met with a look that, more than anything else, seemed filled with disappointment. The woman across from her didn't say a word, but her eyes were enough for Lily to understand that something very serious was going on. "You know what we're talking about, don't you?" The boss finally spoke, her voice low but firm. Lily sat down, feeling the weight of those words settle over her. She knew, but she wasn't sure what. Each word felt like a sharp knife, cutting deeper as she tried to understand where she'd gone wrong. "No, I don't understand. What's going on?" The boss then picked up a folder and slowly opened it. Inside were falsified documents, manipulated information, details of projects supposedly designed by Lily but that didn't match anything she'd written or produced. And among those pages, a signature. Emily's signature. Her own sister. Lily's world collapsed in that moment. She stared at the papers, her mind and body shattering at the revelation. Emily had done this, her own sister had lied. And not only had she lied, but she had entangled everything in a web of fabrications that now threatened to destroy her career. The lie was there, documented, printed, concrete. Betrayal was no longer a question. It was a cruel and bitter reality. Lily didn't know what to do. The truth seemed so distant, so unrecognizable in the face of the evidence before her. How could the person she trusted most have done this? How could Emily, who had always been her ally, become her greatest enemy? The pain was suffocating, but the worst was yet to come. In a moment of utter desperation, Lily left the HR office and went to Emily's office, unsure of what she would find. She needed answers. She needed to face her sister, demand an explanation. But when she entered Emily's office, what she found wasn't a remorseful sister or a plausible explanation. Emily sat there, arms crossed, watching her with a cold gaze, without a word of apology, without a hint of remorse. "Lily, you knew this was coming, didn't you?" Emily said, her voice thick with contempt. You never realized it, but your rise was crushing me. I've always been the shadow. And now, well, now you'll understand what it's like to be left behind." Lily was speechless. Each syllable Emily spoke was like a knife to her chest. The lie, which had once seemed like a tiny seed, was now a fire consuming everything around her. There was no turning back. The betrayal was done, and Emily didn't care one bit about the consequences. The only thing left for Lily was to figure out how all this could be reversed. She knew the truth needed to come out, but she didn't know how. Not now. Not while her career was being destroyed by a lie she never imagined would come from the one she loved most. The fire was burning. And despite all the pain, Lily knew the fight was just beginning. The days following that meeting were a blur for Lily. Each step felt like a lost battle before it even began. The messages of support she received now felt hollow, as if the words were from someone completely different. The sound of her phone, now buzzing with notifications, only increased the pressure in her chest. She tried to respond, to maintain her routine, but the weight of lies and betrayal was so heavy she could barely breathe. One afternoon, however, something changed. It wasn't a message or a meeting that shook her further, but a simple look. Lily was in her office, her usual space, surrounded by papers and reports, when someone walked into the room. It was Tom, one of the team members, with whom she had always had a relationship of trust and respect. But when he walked in, his gaze was different. There was something about him that made her pause for a second, something that wasn't right. Tom was one of those coworkers who was never afraid to express himself. He was always direct, straightforward, but he also always had a genuine smile that made everyone feel at ease. But at that moment, that smile was missing. In its place was an expression of uncertainty and discomfort. What frightened her most was the thought that he hadn't arrived with that same enthusiasm that always accompanied him. "Lily, we need to talk." His voice was low, almost hesitant. Those words made her stomach lurch. She knew this wasn't just casual conversation. It wasn't just about work. She'd grown accustomed to everyone's distance, but Tom's gaze seemed filled with something she didn't want to face. "Sure, go ahead," she replied, trying to maintain her composure but feeling a lump tighten in her throat. He closed the door behind him, still not making eye contact. He was clearly struggling with something inside, something he could no longer hide. When he finally spoke, the tension in the air was palpable. "I know what's going on, Lily. What they did to you isn't right. I didn't want to keep you in the dark, but I don't know how to tell you this. This whole thing, it's all been manipulated." Tom took a step toward the table, as if unsure where to put his hands. "I saw the email exchange, the messages, everything, Lily. I saw it." Lily's blood ran cold. "What did you see?" "I don't know where exactly it started, but there's something wrong with what they're saying about you." He hesitated, and his eyes finally met hers, filled with regret. "I saw your sister's name. Emily. What do you think about that?" The word Emily fell through the air like a bomb. Lily looked at him with an expression of disbelief, as if what he was saying made no sense at all. "I don't understand, Tom. You mean Emily?" Tom nodded, anguish etched on his face. "I can't give you all the details, but it seems someone within the company, someone close to you, has started spreading rumors about you. And these rumors have to do with something, well, involving your sister." Those words hit Lily like a lightning bolt. She couldn't process what she was hearing. How could this be happening? How could she even imagine that Emily, her sister, the person she'd always considered her best friend, could be involved in this? Lily's mind began to race like a runaway machine. She remembered those empty conversations she'd had with Emily, the messages that seemed insincere, the distant glances. There had been signs. Several signs she'd ignored, but now everything was falling into place horribly. "I know you're in shock," Tom said, his voice softening. "But you need to be careful. They're watching you, and you have to be strong now, because there's much more to come." Lily fell silent, struggling for words. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. She didn't want to believe it. She absolutely didn't want Tom to be the truth. But the look in his eyes, the serious tone, the way he couldn't hide his discomfort, all of it made her realize he wasn't lying. He was just trying to protect her. "Lily," Tom continued, "you have to be careful. The company is being caught up in something that will be difficult to explain. I don't know how much longer they'll try to hide this. I'm just warning you, because I don't know what else to do. I'm on your side, but there's not much I can do if you don't act." Lily, still in shock, nodded slowly, speechless. She knew Tom was right, that he was trying to help her, but at the same time, she felt as if she were sinking into a sea of uncertainty. There was no escaping it, not while Emily's lie was spreading like wildfire through everything she had built. She thanked Tom, but her mind was far away, preoccupied with thoughts of how it had all come to this. How her life had transformed into something unrecognizable, but worst of all was the feeling of betrayal. She no longer knew who she could trust. She no longer knew how to defend herself when the person she trusted most was behind all this. As she left Tom's office, Lily felt a weight on her chest, as if the truth were now closer, yet still distant, like something she couldn't yet touch. The first warning sign had been given. But what else would she discover? The deeper she dug, the more horrifying the truth would be. She didn't know, but one thing was certain. Her life would never be the same. Emily's lie now had a face. And that face was beginning to reveal itself in all the shadows Lily tried to ignore. She knew what came next would be even more devastating. But more than ever, Lily knew she needed to uncover everything, expose everything, because, in the end, the truth would be the only thing that could save what was left. And she wouldn't let lies take over. The big event was finally approaching, and with it, the feeling that Lily's fate was about to be decided. The auditorium was reserved, the chairs meticulously arranged to accommodate investors, industry leaders, and other company colleagues. It was the pinnacle of her career. After so many years of struggle and dedication, this was the moment that would define everything. A great presentation, a great opportunity. But as the event approached, the weight of the past few weeks began to weigh on her. Lily couldn't simply forget what was happening behind the scenes. Couldn't help but remember Tom's words, how her sister was behind it all, even with all the preparation, the impeccable structure of the event, and the support she still received from some of the staff. Lily couldn't shake the feeling that everything around her was falling apart. She was in her office, alone, trying to review her notes one last time before going on stage. The computer in front of her was filled with charts, projects, and forecasts, but none of them could calm the turmoil inside her head. The thought of Emily, the lies, the betrayal, wouldn't leave her alone. She was about to expose her life's work to the entire world, and at the same time, the idea that her sister had tried to destroy her from the inside out made every nerve in her body tense. She took a deep breath and looked out the window. The sky was overcast, the clouds seeming to weigh down the city, as if reflecting her own anguish. She remembered the days when they played together, when Emily was more than a sister, a true friend, a confidant. How had all that turned into a silent war? How had her trust in Emily become a knife cutting into her soul? The room door opened, interrupting his thoughts. It was his assistant, Sarah, who entered with a nervous smile. "Everything is ready for the event. The investors have arrived. Everyone is waiting for you to take the stage. Are you okay?" Lily looked at her, forcing a smile. "Yes, of course. I just need a moment to finish up here." Sarah watched her for a moment, but didn't press further. Lily knew how much Sarah cared about her, and despite everything, she was grateful for her loyalty. The assistant closed the door behind her, and Lily was alone again, face to face with the weight of her own fate. She needed to focus. This event was everything she wanted. If she could emerge from it successfully, everything she'd been through, the hardships, the pain of betrayal, the lies they'd tried to force upon her, it would all have been worth it. But to do that, she needed to show everyone that she was in control, that nothing could bring her down. But the truth was, the more she thought about what was to come, the more the idea that Emily had orchestrated it all seemed to take hold of her mind. Lily got up from her chair and walked over to the mirror. She looked at herself, trying to see past the tension in her face. She was so focused on looking confident, on having perfect posture, but inside, her mind was in turmoil. The truth was, she didn't know if she could trust anyone, not even herself. She picked up her phone, her fingers hesitant over the screen. Tom had given her a warning, but there was no time for further investigation. She knew she had to move on, but the feeling of being watched, manipulated by someone so close to her, wouldn't leave her. She thought of Emily again, trying to understand how her sister could have become the embodiment of betrayal. But in that moment, Lily knew she couldn't let that paralyze her. She had a job to do, she had a life to defend, and this event was the opportunity she'd been searching for to prove to everyone, including Emily, that she was more than a victim. Time was running out. She had to take the stage now. Every second that passed felt harder, as if she were carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. But with one last look in the mirror, she pulled herself together. The insecure girl who had walked into that room was gone. Now it was time for Lily to show the world who she truly was. When she walked onto the stage, the glare of the lights momentarily blinded her. The seats were filled, the audience watching intently. Lily stepped forward, microphone in hand, her heart pounding, but her expression impassive. She took a deep breath, and deep down, she felt a courage she hadn't known she possessed. The audience was waiting for her. The future of her career depended on those next words. The presentation began. Lily spoke clearly and confidently, as she always did, but inside, there was a silent battle. Every word she spoke seemed to resonate deep within her. She wasn't just presenting herself to investors. She was presenting herself to the world. She was trying to prove to herself that, no matter how close the shadows of betrayal loomed, she wouldn't be crushed, she wouldn't be defeated. With each slide, each projection, each argument she made, her body relaxed a little more. Her focus returned. The audience was listening. She was regaining control, but deep down, a persistent feeling nagged at her. Something wasn't right. Something was still out of place. When she finished her performance, the audience applauded. But what Lily didn't know was that, in the center of the audience, there was a familiar figure watching her intently, a figure who wasn't there to support, but to destroy. The event had been a success, but the worst was yet to come. And as she left the stage, Lily felt the weight of the lie once again. Emily was closer than she imagined. Lily was back in her office, trying to process what had just happened. The presentation had been a success. The words of support and the admiring looks from investors and colleagues were still fresh in her mind. She should have felt victorious, relieved, but the feeling of unease, of a shadow following her, wouldn't leave her alone. The lie, the betrayal, were getting closer and closer. And what had previously seemed like a mild discomfort was now beginning to materialize as a real, concrete threat. Lily's phone vibrated, breaking the silence of her office. She glanced at the screen and saw it was a message from her trusted colleague, David. He'd been with her since the early days of her career, someone she'd always trusted. But at that moment, his name felt like a reminder of what was happening. She knew something wasn't right, that he, too, might have been caught up in the web of lies Emily had woven. David's message simply said, "We need to talk. We can't hide what's happening anymore. You need to know the truth before it's too late." Lily swallowed. She knew this wasn't good. In a split second, all the moments she'd tried to ignore, all the little clues life had thrown her way, began to come together. Something was happening, something much bigger than she'd imagined. She arranged to meet David that evening at a discreet cafe downtown. When she arrived, she found him sitting at a table near the window. He looked exhausted, as if he'd carried a heavy weight on his shoulders. But there was something in his eyes that told her the battle was about to end. Lily sat down without a word, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Lily, I didn't mean for it to be like this," David began, the heavy words tumbling from his mouth, like a confession. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but things are out of control." Lily felt her stomach churn. "What are you talking about? What's going on?" David looked around, as if afraid of being overheard, before leaning forward. I heard about your sister. I know what she's doing, and I tried to stop her. But you have no idea how far she's gone with this. I can't stay silent anymore." Lily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Emily, her own sister, but David's words, and the fear evident on his face, were beginning to open her eyes to a reality she no longer wanted to see. The lie, the slander being spread about her, wasn't something Emily had just started one night in anger. No, this was something that had been carefully, precisely planned. David hesitated, and Lily realized how much this was costing him. She manipulated documents. And that's not all. She's behind the rumors about you, Lily. She planted all of this with a very clear motive. She wants your job, and she won't stop until she gets it. David's words fell on her like an unbearable weight. Lily stared at him, trying to understand what he was saying. "No, you're lying. She's my sister. It can't be this, it can't be." David let out a weary sigh. "I know this is hard to hear, but the evidence is everywhere. I tried, Lily. I tried to warn you before, but you were so focused, so sure everything was fine, that you didn't see what was happening. She has connections within the company. She's gone after everything. Your reputation, your work, your victories. She wants to see you fail. And she's done it so carefully that no one would ever suspect." Lily felt her head spin. It was as if she were in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She wanted to scream, wanted to deny it all, but David's words carried immense weight, and she knew he wouldn't lie to her. The fear in his eyes, the anguish he felt, was real. I know you're shocked, but you need to understand. Your sister is relentless. She's already taken over your surroundings. If you don't act quickly, you'll lose everything. David's words reverberated in Lily's mind like a silent scream. I can't believe Emily did this. I can't. David looked at her, his expression of regret deepening. I know it's hard, but now you have a choice. You can keep trying to pretend nothing's happening, or you can fight. But if you choose to fight, it will be a merciless war. Your sister will stop at nothing to destroy you. And so far, she's been far smarter than all of us. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily felt as if the ground were being torn from under her feet. Her sister, the person she trusted most, was behind it all. Everything she had achieved was being torn down by a carefully constructed lie. And worst of all, she never imagined that the person closest to her could be her greatest enemy. David looked at her again, as if wanting her to understand the gravity of the situation. Lily, if you don't act fast, it'll be too late. I'll help you explain this, but you need to be strong now. I know you have what it takes, but you need to be smarter than her. Lily felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her chest, a pressure so strong she could barely breathe. She looked at David, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. I'll fight, she said, her voice firm. I won't let her destroy everything. I won't let my life be taken over by a lie. When she left the cafe, the night was darker, the icy wind biting her face, but something inside Lily had changed. She knew now that the war was no longer just about her work or her achievements. It was a war for her own truth. And though she was at a disadvantage, she knew she couldn't let Emily's lies defeat her. She would fight, and she would do whatever it took to reveal the truth, no matter the cost. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. David's words echoed in her mind over and over. She wants her place. And she won't stop until she gets it. The sound of that sentence seemed to repeat itself, incessantly, as images of her sister, Emily, invaded her thoughts. How could she have done that? How could she betray someone she had always considered her partner, her accomplice? The lie, the sabotage, it was all beginning to unfold before her with cruel clarity. The next day arrived. But Lily was far from ready for what was to come. She knew she needed to act, and fast. The information David had given her was like a nightmare, but she knew she could no longer allow herself to live in a world of denial. What troubled her most was the feeling of helplessness. The fact that her sister had managed to hide her true intentions for so long. Lily prepared herself, as always, but there was something different about her demeanor now. She no longer walked into work with the same confidence she once had. A layer of tension built on her shoulders with each step, as if she were carrying the weight of a secret she could no longer ignore. When she arrived at the office, the mood seemed more somber than ever. People greeted her with polite smiles, but Lily couldn't help but notice the suspicious looks. It was as if everyone knew, but no one said anything. She went to her desk and began reviewing the content of her upcoming meeting, but the feeling of being watched nagged at her. Then, by pure coincidence, an email arrived in her inbox. It was from one of the most senior members of the board, someone she had worked with extensively and had always believed to be her ally. She opened the message with a feeling of apprehension in her chest. The content of the email was short but clear. Lily, we need to talk. I've found some inconsistencies in your work. I need you to explain a few things to me before our next meeting. Lily felt her blood run cold. Inconsistencies. What did he mean by that? She stared at the screen for a moment, trying to process his words. How could anyone find fault with her work? She'd always been meticulous, always making sure everything was perfect before submitting anything. But the seed of doubt that had been planted was now growing rapidly. She replied to the email, scheduling a meeting for that afternoon, but as she waited, her phone vibrated again. This time, it was a message from her former mentor, someone who had always been a source of support. Lily, have you seen what people are saying? Some people are questioning the quality of your work. I know you won't let this go, but be careful who you trust. His mentor's words echoed in his mind. Be careful who you trust. Lily felt a wave of anger wash over her. She knew someone was manipulating things behind the scenes. But who? That's when she remembered. Emily, her sister, had started planting these seeds, these doubts, weeks ago. Lily now knew what was happening. Emily had spread rumors. She had done the dirty work of creating fictitious flaws in Lily's work, and worst of all, no one would question the supposed inconsistencies because they came from within the company itself. She was sabotaging everything Lily had built, destroying her image from the inside out. Lily didn't know what to do, but she knew she couldn't let this go. The meeting with the board member finally arrived, and when she entered the room, his gaze was icy, as if he knew something she didn't want to admit. "Lily," he began bluntly, "there are a few things we need to clarify. I have some questions about your project numbers. They don't seem to match previous reports. Can you explain?" Lily felt her heart race. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. But once again, her inner voice overpowered her panic. She took a deep breath and began to explain the calculations and analysis in detail. Each word was an attempt to prove that this wasn't a mistake. She knew what she was doing, but she felt the walls closing in around her as she spoke. She felt that with each argument she made, the stronger the feeling that she was being watched. Not just by that board member, but by something larger, something more sinister lurking in the shadows. She was being tested. But the lie Emily had planted was now becoming a reality, impossible to deny. At the end of the meeting, the board member stood up, still with that suspicious look. "You have a great explanation, Lily, but we need to do a full review of these numbers before we make any decisions." Lily left the room, her body rigid with tension. She knew this wasn't just a normal review. They were questioning her work, her competence, everything she had built. She was being forced to prove something she wasn't guilty of, and the only reason for this was Emily. Her own sister was behind this, manipulating, destroying. She returned to her desk, and her phone vibrated again. It was a message from Emily. Just one word: "Sorry." Lily stared at the message, and anger began to well up in her. Sorry. This couldn't be real. Emily knew exactly what she was doing, and now, she was trying to cover up her own betrayal with a simple apology. It was time to act. Lily couldn't wait any longer. She couldn't allow her sister to continue destroying her life unchallenged. The battle was declared. She would expose Emily's lie to the world, no matter the cost. If Emily wanted to play dirty, then Lily would play with everything she had. The war had begun, and there would be no turning back. Lily was home that late afternoon, alone, sitting at the dinner table that always seemed so full of laughter and conversation. But at that moment, the table was empty, as was her heart. What she wanted most right now was to escape this nightmare, to close her eyes and wake up in a reality where the words lie and betrayal hadn't infiltrated her life like a silent virus, corroding everything she knew and loved. But that wouldn't happen. She knew it. The truth, however painful, needed to come out, and Emily needed to be confronted. The workday had been a nightmare. That meeting with the principal, the pressure of having to answer for something she hadn't done, and the messages of support that seemed like just another way to mask the growing doubt in everyone's eyes. But worst of all, what tortured her most, was Emily's gaze. Not the gaze of a sister regretting something, but of someone who knew the game was about to be played and wanted to remain in control. Lily had no more doubts. It had all been orchestrated, and Emily was at the center of it. With the coldness of someone who knew exactly what she was doing, she picked up her phone again. It wasn't a new message, but Emily's words were still there. Sorry. Lily felt a rising anger in her chest. Sorry. Was that all her sister had to say after everything she'd done? As if it were possible to erase the pain, suffering, and humiliation with an empty word. She considered responding, but something inside her told her that wasn't the way to go. Not anymore. Lily knew that to get to the truth, she needed to first understand what was going on around her. Her career was at risk, her image was being undermined, and her own sister was destroying everything in the name of envy and a desire for power. But beyond that, there was something else: distrust. Distrust that now permeated every aspect of her life. Not just toward Emily, but toward everyone around her. How could she trust the people who had always been by her side when one of them, the closest to her, had been capable of doing the unthinkable? How could she believe anyone's words when she knew the rumors, the lies, and the dirty tricks were being spread by someone who should have been her ally? She looked at the family photos on the bookshelf. Memories of happy times, of trips, of parties. But now all that seemed distant, as if it belonged to another life. A life where Emily was the sister she trusted blindly. A life where their love wasn't tainted by competitiveness, ambition, or betrayal. How had everything changed so quickly? The sound of a doorbell pulled her from her thoughts. She glanced at the door. Who could it be now? She was so tired of dealing with yet another problem, yet another person who looked at her with pity or distrust. Still, she got up and went to the door. When she opened it, she found David. He was standing there, his shoulders tense, a worried look on his face. "Lily, we need to talk. Now." She didn't hesitate. She opened the door wide and motioned for him to enter. David was always by her side, always within reach of wise counsel, but today, he seemed more burdened, more vulnerable than ever. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking into her eyes. There was genuine concern in his voice, but also a clear sign that he knew what was happening. David knew the lies being spread, knew that Lily was at war, and that she could no longer trust anything or anyone. "I don't know, David. How am I supposed to be? How can I be okay when my own sister destroys everything I've built? When everything I have is thrown into doubt by such a cruel lie?" Lily's voice was shaking, but her anger wouldn't let her interrupt. "And the worst part is, I can't even trust you right now, anyone. I feel alone on this battlefield, not knowing who's loyal, who's behind this." David stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I understand this is difficult, Lily. I really do. But this isn't the time for you to isolate yourself. You need to understand that, even though everything seems to be against you, there are more people on your side than you realize. And Emily, she may have an advantage, but she won't hold it for long. Lies always fall flat." "And what do you expect me to do, David?" "Keep smiling, as if nothing has changed. As if my life were a facade, an illusion. The lie has spread throughout the company, and now no one seems to believe me anymore. There's no trust anywhere. There's no room for it anymore." David looked at her with a sincerity that made her pause. "That's exactly where you're wrong. Trust can be shaken, yes, but it's not something that disappears overnight, Lily. True trust, trust in the people who truly matter, isn't built on words, but on actions, and you're going to prove it now. Not with more words, but with what you do next. Don't let the weight of distrust weaken you. You still have control of your story. Trust comes from truth, and the truth, my friend, is on your side." David's words touched something deep within Lily. She had lost herself in distrust, pain, and anger, but perhaps it was time to take control again. Perhaps it was time to seek the truth and expose what was happening, once and for all. She couldn't let Emily win like this. She couldn't let the weight of distrust make her give up everything she still had, her integrity, her fight, and her truth. Lily looked at David with renewed determination. "You're right, I can't let this go. I won't give in to lies. I will fight for the truth to be heard. And I'll start now." The weight of distrust still loomed over her, but for the first time in weeks, Lily felt a small sense of relief. She knew that, no matter what happened, she wasn't alone in this war. She still had her courage. She still had her truth. And from that moment on, that would be enough. Day was about to break, and the sky, tinged with a deep orange, reflected the unease Lily felt within. She stood in the city center, in a secluded cafe, waiting for the last person she ever imagined she'd need to speak to. But the truth always finds a way to be heard. And Lily knew the only chance to reverse everything that was happening was right there. Right then, with the final piece needed to unmask her sister. The door sounded open, and Lily looked up. There was Mark, the company's head of operations. Someone she'd always respected, someone who always seemed to have a sound opinion. He was older, but very perceptive, and he never let anything go unnoticed. When he approached her desk, his eyes were tense, but there was something else there. Something Lily hadn't been able to identify until now. "Lily," Mark said, his voice deep and controlled. "I needed to talk to you. I don't know where to begin, so I'll get straight to the point. What your sister did. It's becoming a problem for all of us, but I know you didn't know any of this." Lily felt a pang in her chest. She'd been expecting it, but hearing it from Mark made it all the more real. She took a deep breath, trying to keep control. "I knew, but I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe it. But now everything connects, everything fits together. It's not just about my career, it's about what she did to my life, what she did to our relationship. She betrayed me, Mark. And now, I have to face all of it." Mark looked at her deeply, as if measuring his words, as if pondering what to say next. "You need to know what was going on behind the scenes, Lily. There's more involved than you realize. I never thought I'd have to say this, but the company is being manipulated from within. Emily has allied herself with people you never imagined would be willing to do what they did. And she's not acting alone. It was a well-planned, collaborative effort. Mark's words had a devastating effect. Lily felt a deep hollowness grow in her stomach. She had always known Emily had betrayed her trust, but the depth of that betrayal was beginning to reveal itself. It wasn't just gossip or manipulation. Emily had infiltrated the very core of the company, knowing how to move the right players, the right people, to bring Lily down. She hadn't acted alone. She had support. Mark then placed a folder on the table. The paper he showed Lily was the missing key, a detailed, meticulous report with records that linked Emily to some suspicious transactions within the company. But what really made Lily feel the weight of the truth was the name that was there, next to Emily's, the name of a senior executive with whom she had always had good relations. And it was then that the full extent of the betrayal hit her. This report, Mark began, pausing for a moment. It's not just about an attempt to tarnish your image. They were engaging in outright sabotage. They were manipulating the company's finances, using you as a distraction while they aligned themselves with an internal network to take the position you were about to achieve. They knew you would get this far. They just needed to create enough chaos for you to fall. Lily was speechless. She couldn't believe it. Emily, her sister, had used everything she loved most to achieve something she wasn't even sure she truly wanted. It wasn't just envy or a desire for recognition. It was an obsession with control, with destroying what she saw as her only barrier to success. And, worst of all, she had allied herself with the very system that was supposed to be her support. This won't stay like this, Mark. Lily's voice was firm, but not without the weight of anger she felt. I'll expose this. I'll show everyone what she did. She has to pay for this. She has to understand that she won't get away with this. Mark looked at her, a sad look in his eyes. Lily, you know what this will cost, don't you? Revealing this will change everything. Not just for her, but for you too. Your career, ... Your image won't be the same after this. I don't know if you're ready to see what comes next. Lily didn't hesitate. I have no choice, Mark. I can't let this happen. I can't let my sister, my own family, destroy me like this. If I don't do this now, I'll lose everything. So I'm going to fight. Mark watched her for a long moment, as if deciding something. Then he closed the folder and pushed it a little closer to her. Then do what you have to do. But know that by doing so, you will change the course of things forever. Lily looked at the report again, her mind already beginning to formulate her next step. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She couldn't let fear and pain paralyze her. It was time to act. The truth had to come out, and she was willing to lose whatever it took to ensure Emily paid for what she had done. As she left that cafe, the feeling of power flooded back into her mind. She was no longer afraid. She knew what to do, and, most importantly, she knew that the fight she would wage from that moment on would be for what should always have been hers: truth, justice, and the freedom to live without the chains of the lies her sister had forged. She would not allow Emily to win. Not anymore. The big day arrived. It was the moment Lily had waited her entire life for, the culmination of her career. The room was packed with executives, investors, co-workers, and industry leaders. The event, which would be the chance of a lifetime, felt more like a trial than an opportunity. Every glance directed at her seemed charged with unspoken questions, silent judgments. But now, nothing could stop her. She was here not only to present her work, but to face the truth, to confront her sister, Emily, and expose everything she had done. As the stage was being set, Lily remained in her dressing room, studying her reflection in the mirror. What she saw wasn't the insecure woman who'd walked into that office months ago, but a warrior, someone who'd been through personal hell and was now ready to face whatever it took. She'd prepared herself, more than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just about what she'd accomplished so far. It was about what she was about to reveal. Nerves on edge, she took a deep breath. She knew that every word, every gesture on that stage could mean everything or nothing. But more than anything, she knew that her family, her sister, would never see her the same way again after that moment. When she was called to the stage, the room fell into an expectant silence. The lights shone down on her, almost blinding her, but for a brief moment, she felt at peace. The world seemed to stand still for a moment. All eyes were on her, and that was all she needed. She was no longer alone. She walked onto the stage with a straight posture, microphone in hand. Her first words came out with crystal clarity, as if her soul were pouring into each sentence. She spoke of her achievements, the victories she'd achieved, and the hard work that had gotten her there. The audience was attentive, absorbing every word. But as she progressed through her presentation, the atmosphere began to shift. There was something in the air, a palpable tension. Mark's words still echoed in her mind, and she knew this stage wasn't just a place to showcase her work. It was the setting for the final battle, and then, mid-performance, she saw her. Emily was sitting in the front row, watching her with a fake smile on her lips. Those eyes that had once conveyed love and support were now cold and calculating. Emily, the person she loved most in the world, was there, just a few feet away. Part of something much bigger, much darker. Emily's presence made Lily's heart race. But instead of trembling, she felt a surge of determination rise within her. She knew what she had to do. She wasn't here to be stopped by a lie. She wouldn't let what Emily had done go unnoticed. That's when she paused. She felt the weight of the room press down on her. The audience, which had been attentive until then, now felt as if they were waiting for something more, something about to be revealed. Lily looked directly at Emily, who was still staring at her with that sly smile. And in that moment, she made her decision. I know everyone expects to see my work and my results here today, but before that, there's something everyone needs to know. His voice was firm, without hesitation. I'm not here just to talk about success and achievement. I'm here to face the truth. The room was completely silent. All eyes were on her, some confused, some curious, but Lily was beyond all that. She was there for one reason, to expose the lie. She stepped forward, still looking at Emily, who looked tense as if trying to maintain control of the situation. What you don't know, what none of you know, is that while I was working tirelessly to get here, someone within my own family was trying to destroy me. And that person, who stands here today, in front of all of you, is the reason my image has been tarnished, my career threatened. Lily's words cut through the silence like a sharp blade. Emily looked at her, her face pale, trying to remain calm, but Lily already knew the game was lost for her. The truth had been thrown in everyone's faces. My sister, Emily, Lily continued, her voice now thick with the anger she finally allowed to escape, worked against me at every turn, spreading lies, manipulating information, and even allying with people within the company to tear down what I built. And worst of all, the betrayal of someone who should have been my partner, my confidant, is the reason I'm here today, facing all of you. The room was in absolute shock. Lily could see the others' reactions, the surprised expressions, the glances exchanged between the executives, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that the truth was finally taking center stage. Emily stood up abruptly, but before she could say a word, Lily continued, I know what you did. And no matter how much you try to deny it, the truth always finds a way to come out. You tried to destroy my life, but today, here, I'm revealing who you really are. Emily's gaze was filled with rage now. She looked ready to explode, but Lily had already spoken her piece. She could no longer be intimidated, could no longer allow the lie to win. The war was won. Not by force, but by truth, as Emily tried to compose herself, trying to give explanations no one else wanted to hear. Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced the greatest battle of all. And on that stage, she exposed not only her sister, but also her own strength. She was more than the lies, more than the pain. She was the truth, and the truth, finally, had taken the stage. The silence that followed the confrontation was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. Lily stood there, center stage, motionless, while the audience still absorbed the words she had just spoken. She didn't know if the tension she felt was stronger than the relief of finally speaking the truth or the weight of uncertainty that still hung over everything. Emily's gaze, icy and furious, wouldn't leave her mind. Lily knew the worst was yet to come, but at the same time, she felt a strength she never knew she possessed. Emily wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't pretending anymore. She was furious. With long strides, she approached the stage, her voice shaking with anger. That's not true, Lily. You can't just accuse me like that, in front of everyone. I'm your sister, and you have no right to expose me like that. The audience was divided. Some people looked in disbelief. Others were visibly surprised, but the growing murmur became a distant roar. Emily tried to control the situation, but Lily knew it was too late to turn back. She had control now. Not just over the room, but over her own life. No, Emily, Lily said, her voice calm but filled with unusual strength. You don't understand. I spent years trying to believe you had my best interests at heart, that we were partners. But the truth is, you used me. You used our relationship, our family, to destroy what I loved most. And I'm no longer willing to pretend I didn't see what happened. Emily took a step forward, trying to speak, but her words were lost in her own anger. Lily stared at her, undeterred. Your lie started as something small, a tiny crack you fed until it became a huge hole. But you didn't know, Emily, that lies don't have long legs. The truth always comes out, no matter how hard you try to hide it. And with those words, Lily took the final step. She had not only exposed Emily's mistakes, but also what she herself had been forced to face. The audience was now attentive, and the impact of her words reverberated. Emily tried to counterattack, but her words were empty. She had no way to deny what was already there for all to see. In a decisive gesture, Lily grabbed the documents from her desk, the definitive proof of Emily's manipulation, the emails, the records, the falsified reports. Each page was irrefutable evidence of the sabotage she had suffered. Here is the proof of what you did, Emily. There's no more hiding. There's no more denying. Emily tried to hide her anguish, but her eyes were filled with fear. She knew that, in that moment, she had lost control. She knew her facade had crumbled. The room, previously filled with uncertain murmurs, was now completely silent. Every person watching knew that what was happening there was more than a personal dispute. It was a fight for the truth, for the right to be who you are, without the weight of a lie that tries to destroy everything you've built. The reactions in the room began to become more evident. Some looked at Emily with disapproval, others with disbelief. Lily felt time stand still as the truth finally sank in. The audience now had no doubts. Emily was the one who had caused all this chaos. And no matter how hard she tried to reverse the situation, she could no longer fool everyone. Lily looked directly at Emily, her heart heavy but her mind clear. I loved you, Emily. I loved you as a sister, but you're no longer the person I thought you were. And more than that, I'm no longer who you wanted me to be. I'm someone who fought for the truth, and I'll keep fighting. Emily was speechless. There was nothing more she could say. She knew everything she had done had been exposed. She knew she was lost. Lily took a step back, looking at the audience. At the people who were now seeing what she had always known but never had the courage to say, I'm not here for revenge, but to ensure the truth is heard. No one should be destroyed by another's lies. And I will ensure that this lie doesn't destroy me. The audience's murmur turned to applause, many eyes shining with admiration, and Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had not only won a battle against her sister, but against everything that tried to bring her down. Emily's lie had fallen, and with it, the chains that bound her were also broken. Lily took a deep breath and felt the lightness of knowing that she was finally free. Free from the lies. Free from the pain. And though the path ahead was still difficult, she knew the truth would make her stronger. More than ever, she had control over her own story. The lie had fallen, and now, the true victory began. The room still echoed with the applause, but Lily didn't hear it. She was in a state of profound lightness, as if she had freed herself from a weight that had been crushing her for so long. The battle was finally over. The weight of lies and betrayal had been lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she felt air rush deep into her lungs, unafraid of suffocating from the pain that had been with her for weeks. She looked at Emily, who was now alone, shrouded in shame and regret that could not be denied. But Lily didn't feel anger. Not anymore. What she felt was something more powerful. Compassion. Because, deep down, she knew Emily had lost her way along the way. The relentless pursuit of something she felt she deserved had led her to darkness. And perhaps, deep down, that was the greatest punishment, the loss of herself. But there, on stage, in front of everyone, was the end of the lie. And the truth, though painful, always finds its way. Lily had discovered something much greater than her victory over her sister. She had learned to rise again, to trust her own strength, to fight for her truth. What seemed like the end of her career, of her story, actually turned out to be a new beginning. The journey she had taken transformed her into a stronger, wiser woman, more capable of facing any adversity. Not with anger or revenge, but with the certainty that justice would come in its own time. The real victory wasn't when she exposed Emily. The real victory was when she recognized her own power. When she decided she wouldn't allow anyone else, not even the person closest to her, to rob her of her truth. When she looked in the mirror and realized that freedom isn't in being perfect or untouched, but in being authentic and courageous enough to live your own story. no matter how difficult it may be. What Emily didn't understand, and what many still don't, is that Lily's true strength wasn't in her career or her image in the eyes of others. It was in her soul, in the fire that burned within her when she decided she wouldn't let lies define her. Lily had freed herself, and with that, she discovered something more important than any achievement or title: her inner peace. She knew the path ahead would be filled with challenges, but she no longer feared them. She had learned to rebuild herself. She knew that true redemption comes when you leave behind the weight of revenge and embrace the strength to move forward, with dignity, confidence, and courage. And so, with her head held high, Lily took the first step toward her future. Because, ultimately, the greatest victory of all is not over others, but over yourself. And in achieving her own redemption, she achieved the true triumph, the freedom to be who she was born to be. If you were inspired by this story of overcoming in truth, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Lily's journey of transformation teaches us that no matter how difficult the battles, the truth will always prevail. If you believe this too, join us and continue following this story of courage and redemption.